Did you guys get the links, Mr. Armino? Armino? Malaza?
I see one from Chabad, yeah.
Okay. Do you mind helping us read it? Like, we'll take turns.
That's fine. Where do you want me to start?
All right, let's see. Okay. Let's pick up with the last halakha that we read last week. Halakha 3.
Halakha 3? Okay. Okay, here we go. A person who reads the Megillah by heart does not fulfill his obligation. A person who speaks a language other than Hebrew and hears the Megillah read in Hebrew written in the Holy Script fulfills his obligation, although he does not understand what is being read. Similarly, if the Megillah is written in Greek, a person who hears it, even one who speaks Hebrew, fulfills his obligation, although he does not understand what is being read.
Yeah, the divisions are very different between the Hebrew and the English here. Actually, this looks to be the same. Okay. Yeah, that was understood. You understood everything there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You wanna read the next one, or is there somebody else who wants to?
I can.
Okay, if nobody can stop. Here we have some people that will probably volunteer. Del Raja. Mr. Brown. Maybe his mic's not working. Romeo. Romeo. Maybe he's trying to figure things out. Mr. Daraja, can you hear us? All right, go ahead, Gabriel.
Okay. Excuse me. If, however, it was written in Aramaic or in another language of Gentile origin, one who listens to this reading fulfills his obligation only when he understands that language and only when the Megillah is written in that language. In contrast, if the Megillah is written in Hebrew and one read in Aramaic for a person who understood that tongue, one does not fulfill one's obligation, for one is reading by heart. And since the reader cannot fulfill his obligation, the person hearing it read by him also cannot.
All right. Any questions about that? No?
It's pretty straightforward.
Okay. So let's go on. Next one. If you get tired, I'll read it instead.
Oh, do you want me to read it?
Yeah.
Okay. A person who is reading the Megillah without the desired intent does not fulfill his obligation. What is implied? That he was writing a Megillah, explaining it, or checking it. If he had the intent to fulfill his obligation with this reading, his obligation is fulfilled. If he did not have this intent, he did not fulfill his obligation. Should one read while dozing off, he fulfills his obligation, since he is not sound asleep.
Okay. I'll read the next one then.
Okay.
Can anyone else in the room hear us? Or is your mic? Are your mics working?
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, I'm here now.
Oh.
Microphone was.
How was your Holy Sabbath?
Oh, very good. Enjoy relaxing, and that's the main thing.
Did you eat a lot?
Did I read?
Eat.
I'm gonna be honest to you, not much. No, I should,
You-
but
I asked-
basically it was more for your relaxing Shabbat.
Okay, that's cool. So you might.
That is okay.
you-
I
you
hope
might-
it's okay with you.
actually asked about reading. I mean, not reading. Eating.
Eating. Okay, sorry.
But I see you have a conscience about reading, so you can fix that right now. Well, you just disappeared. Oh man, that's a bummer. Okay, so I'm gonna read the next one. Then when he comes back, maybe he'll get it. Okay. All right, so I'm on the sixth one in the Hebrew. Is that also the same in the English?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So it says, with what are we concerned here? That the person who has intention in his writing of the Megillah fulfills his obligation. This is when he intends to fulfill his obligation as he reads from the book that he's copying the words from while he's doing the copying. But if he had intention to fulfill his obligation in the reading of the Megillah by means of the actual new copy that he is copying, that he's writing, he doesn't fulfill his obligation. Because you cannot fulfill your obligation for the recitation of the Megillah except for from a book of the Megillah which is already written in its entirety at the time that the recitation is being done. Got that? Or is it too long of a sentence?
I got it.
Alright. Rabbi Meza,
Yeah.
let's get some diversity here.
Hold on, I'm dealing with the background. I'm trying to get more people in.
No problem. Okay. So there's some new people in here thanks to you, probably. We can get. Looks like maybe they're having computer troubles. All right, Gabriel, go ahead with the next one.
Okay, this is 7.
Right.
Right. Let me bring it back up.
Okay.
Okay. A person who errs while reading the Megillah and who reads in an inexact manner fulfills his obligation, for we are not required to read in a precise manner. A person fulfills his obligation whether he reads it standing or sitting. This applies even when reading for a congregation. Nevertheless, at the outset, out of respect for the congregation, one should not read for the congregation while sitting. If 2 and even 10 people read the Megillah in unison, both the readers and those who listen to the readers fulfill their obligation. An adult and a child can read the Megillah together, even for the community.
Great. All right. So this is just giving us further insight as to the details of how it should really be read properly. Whereas before it was touching on more fundamental aspects where you don't fulfill your obligation at all otherwise. And we're going to see more details like that as well. Is there anybody else in the room who would like to read? Okay. My turn. Ooh, what is that? Okay. So we're on 8. אין קוראים בציבור במגילה הכתובה בין הכתובים, ואם קרא לא יצא, אלא אם כן הייתה יתרה על שאר היריעות, או חסרה. Trying to make out what that would... I don't hear anything. Can everybody hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
we can.
All right. So when reading in a congregation, one should not read from a scroll of Esther, which is written and included among the other writings, presumably of the Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh. And if it was read that way, then he didn't fulfill his obligation to read from the Megillah. Unless it was like distinguished from the other sections of the leather of the scroll, or lessened from it, in order that it would have some kind of distinguishment. But an individual reading in it in this way, even if it's not distinguished in some particular manner, he fulfills his obligation, even though it's not distinguishable as a separate text. Right, this is just following a pattern that's common in Jewish law regarding how ritual type things are done in a community in contrast to with the individual. A lot of times when prayers or other ceremonies are done together in unison as a community, there are going to be more unique or special additions to the prayer that you'll find. So we find this also here with the reading of the Megillah. They try to make it more impacting for the community. So now we are, at least in the Hebrew, on the 9th law. Looks like also in the English, the 9th law. Okay. Daraja, can you hear us? Daraja, I'm sorry. Gabriel. Good morning. I'm using you a lot today.
Oh, hold on. I think Gabriel is
Stuck.
I think he's muted for a second.
Mm.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I hear you. Now I hear you.
Okay. All right. A Megillah may be written only with ink on gevil or on cloth, like a Torah scroll. If it was written with gallnut juice or vitriol, it is acceptable, but if it was written with other tints, it is not acceptable. It must be written on ruled parchment like a Torah scroll. The parchment need not, however, be processed with the intent that it be used for the mitzvah. If it was written on paper or on an animal hide that was not processed, or if it was written by a Gentile or a non-believer, it is not acceptable.
Okay, so this is important because they want it to be similar to a Torah scroll to some degree, although it doesn't have to fulfill all the obligations. So just as with the Torah scroll, we don't fulfill our obligation to write a Torah scroll in our lifetime on just any piece of paper, or the obligation to have it read in the community isn't fulfilled by reading it from just any copy of the Torah, like a modern day book, but it has to be read from an actual scroll consisting of leather that was processed in a certain way. And there are different types of leather from different layers of the skin, so there are specifications for all these things. So similar here also with the Megillah. It needs to be written on Gavir. The definition of Gavir can be found in the laws concerning the Sefer Torah, the Torah scroll. But that's not the topic here, so we'll continue with the laws of the Megillah. The Raja, Boker Tov, Shavua Tov.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Delroy. Okay.
Is anyone else hearing that particularly awful sound?
Yeah. Yeah, if anyone is not speaking, please have your microphones off. Unless you want to ask a question or if you want to be reading. But otherwise, if you keep your mic off, that'll help us with the background noise. All right. Rabbi Mez, are you freed up there?
Yeah. Okay.
We're on the...
Why does he make a distinction in Halacha 9 between Jawil and Klaf? I mean, Jawil is Klaf. It's a type of Klaf.
No. There are two distinct types. You can find the distinction clarified in Hilchot Sefer Torah, the laws of the Torah school.
Okay, Halacha 10. The following rules apply when the letters of the Megillah are rubbed out or torn. If a trace of the letters is discernible, the scroll is acceptable, even if most of the letters have been rubbed out. If no trace of the letters is discernible, the scroll is acceptable if the majority of its letters are intact. If not, it is not acceptable. If the scribe left out a certain letter or verses and the reader reads them by heart, he fulfills his obligation.
So that's only if it's certain verse, like just a few verses or letters, but as opposed to like whole sections of the Megillah, which we already read earlier, is not allowed. Okay. Gabriel, you want to read the next one? We're on 11, I think.
Okay. I had to unmute my microphone.
Must be some technical difficulties with a lot of people today.
Oh, no. That's, okay. A Megillah must be sewn together, i.e. all the parchments on which it is written must be joined as a single scroll. It should be sewn only with animal sinews, as a Torah scroll is. If it is sewn with other thread, it is unacceptable. Sorry, got a phone call. It is not necessary, however, to sew the entire length of the parchment with animal sinews, as a Torah scroll is sewn. As long as one sews 3 stitches at one end of the parchment, 3 stitches in the middle, and 3 stitches at the other end, it is acceptable. This leniency is taken because the Megillah is referred to as an epistle. Esther 9:29.
Right, meaning by epistle it just means letter. So the same way a letter doesn't have to be of super high quality, unlike a book. So also the Megillah, since it's regarded as like a letter, then we're lenient with it, even though they did give a certain standard. Would anybody else like to pick up now? William, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
How you doing?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
Baruch Hashem.
Baruch Hashem.
Are you ready to work for us today?
Sure, I'll read a little bit. We're on 11 or 12.
I believe we are on... We should be on 12 right now. Yeah, 12.
Okay, the readers should read the names of Haman's 10 sons and the word which follows, Aseret, Esther 9:7 through 10, in one breath, to show the entire people that they were all hung and slain together. It is a universally accepted Jewish custom that as the reader of the Megillah reads, he spreads the text out as a letter to show the miracle. When he concludes, he goes back, rolls up the entire text, and recites the concluding blessing.
Excuse me. So, yeah, this is why it's very good to review these laws every year before a particular holiday comes up. Like this particular point at the very end of this law, I don't think I did that last year. I think I said the blessing just as soon as I finished. But we see here that you say the blessing that concludes the reading of the Megillah after you roll it back up. So I'll try to make sure to do that this year. Okay, Gabriel, you there? Nope, looks like he's gone. Deroy, Deraja. No mic? Okay, no mic. I gotcha. Will,
Okay,
you want to go ahead?
sure.
All right.
On these 2 days, the 14th and the 15th of Adar, it is forbidden to eulogize and to fast. This prohibition applies to all people in all places, to the inhabitants of the walled cities who celebrate on the 15th, and on the inhabitants of the unwalled cities who celebrate only the 14th. In a leap year, it is forbidden to eulogize and to fast on these 2 dates, in the first Adar as well as in the second Adar. When the inhabitants of the villages read the Megillah earlier on the day, on the Monday or Thursday before Purim,
Can you hear me?
they are permitted to eulogize and to fast on the day they read the Megillah, and are forbidden to eulogize and to fast on these 2 dates, even though they do not read the Megillah on them.
Okay. Any questions about what was just read?
Testing. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Loud and clear.
Okay.
You want to pick up on the next halakha, Doroy?
Could you send me the link if you don't?
Sure, absolutely.
Yes. I know we are on number 12, I believe.
Now I think we're on 13. We just
13?
finished 12.
Okay. All right. One sec. My computer is acting up this morning. I don't know why.
It seems to be a trend today with other people also.
Yeah. It seems to be acting weird. Probably is a network. It says network problem, so.
We're actually on 14.
Oh, we're on 14? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
In the English.
14. Oh, he disappeared again. All right, go ahead.
I'll go ahead and read 14 just to
Okay.
alleviate the reading stress. Okay, so we're on 14, right? Okay, so it is a mitzvah for the inhabitants of the villages and unwalled cities to consider the 14th of Adar, and for the inhabitants of the walled cities to consider the 15th of Adar, as a day of happiness and festivity, when portions of food are sent to one's friends and presents are given to the poor. It is permitted to work on these days. It is not, however, proper to do so. Our sages declared, whoever works on Purim will never see a sign of blessing. Should the inhabitants of the villages read the Megillah earlier on a Monday or a Thursday and give monetary gifts to the poor on that day on which he reads, they fulfill their obligation. The rejoicing and festivities of the Purim holiday, by contrast, should be held only on the day of the 14th. If they are held earlier, the participants do not fulfill their obligation. A person who conducts the Purim feast at night does not fulfill his obligation.
Yeah. When we get large halakha, actually, I see in the English they all look longer than in Hebrew. But let's break this down into sections. Okay, so the first part of halakha 14 talks about how it's the mitzvah, it's the command is that the inhabitants of villages and unwalled cities would regard the 14th day of the month of Adar as a day of happiness and festivity, which includes having portions of food sent to one's friends and presents given to the poor. And then for walled cities, which they're very few, so unless you live in Jerusalem or in Susan in Persia, you're pretty much not going to do this. Maybe Tveria, I don't know. But so pretty much everybody's going to be celebrating on the 14th. So we see in the first section of halakha 14 that our happiness and festivities are to include charity, both giving gifts to one's friends as well as giving presents to the poor. Okay, so we gotta prepare for that, for the coming holiday of Purim.
But we should also note that many synagogues actually have their feasts and their festivities at nighttime.
That's the law. I mean, that's the essential. We're gonna get to that. That's proper.
But we just read that if they feast at nighttime, they don't fulfill their obligation.
Where did we read that? Where does it say that?
Hold on, let me find it here. 14.
The last sentence.
Right. A person who conducts the Purim feast at night does not fulfill his obligation.
14. Just a second. Yeah, you're right. Sorry about that. Just want to make sure it wasn't a contradiction between the Hebrew and the English.
Now, one of the reasons, but I think with the halakha is displayed this way, is because we should also pray at nighttime. And if someone is overly intoxicated, like from his daily meal, you know, that he can recite Shema in the nighttime. You know, so this also contradicts the notion that one is obligated to get drunk on Purim. Because if the feast, and i.e. the drinking, is done in the daytime, I mean, it doesn't usually take, 3 hours to get over,
Right.
drunkenness.
The truth is, though, that even if they drink at night, and it doesn't prohibit drinking at the night here, you just don't fulfill the obligation, so you'd have to do it again in the morning. But even if you did it in the night, you should be doing it after you recite Kriyat Shema anyway, after you've done all your prayers in any case. We're not supposed to eat and celebrate before having done our prayers. Is anybody wanting to take up the next one? And then we'll move to the laws of Shabbat. One more halakha here in the laws of Purim. Will, you seem very willing. You look like a willing guy over there.
Okay.
Hardy hard.
All right. What is the nature of our obligation for the feast? A person should eat meat and prepare as attractive a feast as his means permit. He should drink wine until he becomes intoxicated and falls asleep in a stupor.
So this is a great one to look at the Hebrew instead of the English. Okay, let's read this in Hebrew. Because this is like the main source of the batical, I don't know, what's that English word for like a crazy thing, spectacle that has become of Purim. Alright, so in the Hebrew, this is the 15th law. This is a little place where the sections are different. It says, what is implied by the obligation of the festival feast? And as Rabbi Meza pointed out, this is supposed to be during the day. If you do it at night, you didn't fulfill your obligation. Whereas nowadays we see that the practice is to get crazy drunk, both in the nighttime and in the daytime. Pretty much the whole day. They're just drunk. In Israel, you'll see drunkards staggering across the road with people honking. It's terrible.
Embarrassing.
It's very embarrassing. Even on YouTube, you can find this guy. He's an ex-Jew who became Muslim, and I'm sure one of the reasons for his doing so, if you check out his videos, is because of this kind of stupidity. He just came to the conclusion that Judaism is absurd if this is what keeping Torah means, but it's not. All right, so this law says, what is implied by the Purim feast? That one eat meat and prepare a pleasant, a very nice feast according to his financial ability, according to what he's able. So don't go beyond what your means are, but still invest in a nice meal. And they drink wine. Ad sheyishtaker v'yiradem b'shichrut. Okay? Now, there are two key words here. It says, after he prepares the meal that's according to his means, then he should also be drinking wine. And then it says ad sheyishtaker. The word ad means until, okay? Not after, not continuing, but just up until the point that, until yishtaker, until he becomes intoxicated. And then it says, v'yiradem b'shichrut. It says that then at his getting drunk, he goes to sleep. At it, not from it, but at the point that he starts to feel intoxication, he should go to sleep. Now, the corrupted versions of the Mishneh Torah These are the versions of the Mishnah Torah that came from the first printing press. I think it was mainly in Vilna, a city in Italy. So those versions, it doesn't say beshikrut, it says meshikrut, and meshikrut means from drunkenness. So they get this idea, or at least try to justify it with Mishnah Torah, by saying that since it says meshikrut, from drunkenness, he should drink until he gets drunk and falls asleep from drunkenness. And therefore, you do what they do, that you get crazy drunk. But in the accurate text of the Mishnah Torah that you will find in the manuscripts of the Mishnah Torah as preserved among the Yemenite Jews, and in the most authoritative manuscripts as you will find even in Europe, in the Oxford manuscripts, they all are in harmony much more with each other, even though they're from different continents, than the early printed editions are. And the fact that the European manuscript of the Mishnah Torah of Oxford, which is considered the most accurate of all the European manuscripts, the fact that it's more in agreement with the Yemenite manuscripts than it is in agreement with the European printed editions really tells you something. Because, well, I think common sense shows that. So this is one of the important reasons for being careful with using an accurate text. The problem is that the English is based on the corrupted text, and here and there the Chabad translation chose to follow the accurate text, but generally it follows the screwed up one. But truth be known also, even if this were written from drunkenness, that he should keep drinking until he falls asleep from drunkenness, it shouldn't be followed, because you're violating a Torah prohibition, and the sages don't have an ability to uproot a Torah prohibition like that. They can do it for what's called Hora'at Sha'ah, as a temporary measure, but not to establish it for many generations, that something like that should be done.
What is the prohibition? The Torah prohibition is being
getting
violated?
drunk, doing something. I mean, we're not. See, the halakha is talking about the first stage of drunkenness, which you're not really like drunk, like an idiot drunk. You're just starting to feel a buzz. You can find on our website, dordeah.com, where we bring a bunch of different sources that clarifies how much drinking this involves. And it doesn't involve so much drinking at all. It's just the first stage of drunkenness. But to continue beyond that, to the point where you're like staggering in the streets and you're breaking into people's homes, which I've experienced firsthand in Israel, that's asur, that's forbidden. You're not allowed to do things, you're not allowed to intentionally put yourself in a state of mind where you're going to violate Torah commandments. That's such a basic thing. The last Purim that I celebrated in Israel, I was at my one of my mentor's houses, and we were at his table having this festive meal, and then we start hearing like a sound in the back of his house. And this was at a yeshiva. Well, he had his house right next to the yeshiva, so he had invited me over. Okay, so we hear this sound, and then next thing we know, this guy comes walking up to the table like he's half dead, like Night of the Living Dead or something. And we all knew who he was. He's one of the like upper level people in the yeshiva who like has been learning there for a really long time. And he's like staggering up to the table, and he asked for some more wine. He just broke through the rabbi's child's bedroom window. It's just really, to say the least, it's unacceptable. I mean, I was very impressed at how the rabbi calmly like gave him some water and some bread and tried to deal with the situation. But you know, in America, you might get killed doing that. Definitely get put in jail. Okay, so that's my tirade on the matter. Okay, so let's go to the laws of the Sabbath now. Does anybody have any questions more about what's been covered so far?
Did you want me to finish? Because we're like in the middle of that.
Oh, really? Sorry.
Yeah.
Ah, for the English, you're in the middle. Okay, go
Yeah.
ahead. And the Hebrew, it's already a separate one. Well, go ahead. No problem.
Okay. Similarly, a person is obligated to send 2 portions of meat, 2 other cooked dishes,
Or two other. Yeah, okay.
yeah, or 2 other foods to a friend, as implied in Esther 9:22. Sending portions of food one to another, 2 portions to one friend. Whoever sends portions to many friends is praiseworthy. If one does not have the means to send portions of food to a friend, one should exchange one's meal with him, each one sending the other what they have prepared for the Purim feast, and this way fulfill the mitzvah of sending presents of food to one's friend.
All right, very good. So next week we'll pick up where we left off. We're almost finished the laws of Purim, I believe. So are there any questions about this before we move on? All right. In that case, we will get you the link for the laws of the Sabbath. I feel a sneeze coming on. Don't you hate it when the sneeze just like lingers and doesn't go? I'm typing out the it's the 7th halacha. There we go. Everybody got the link? Did everybody get the link? Hello?
I got it.
I have it.
All right. Okay, so we're on the 7th law. Before we begin, let's do a little vocabulary review. Okay. What does asur mean?
Forbidden.
Great, very good. What does patur mean?
Exempted.
Perfect. What does mutar mean?
Permitted.
Great. And hayav?
Liable.
Great. Okay. Now, who can say without looking at notes? How do you say?
Busted.
How do you say? Okay, how can we do this? Somebody was helping us here, and I couldn't see who was speaking though. Was that Jasper?
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. All right, so Jasper and Will, you're the 2 guys who are really interacting here. So just raise your hand, and I'll call out which one is going to go. Who can say, without looking at the notes, I see that. Who can say permitted?
Batur.
Ah, you got to raise your hand.
Oh, sorry.
All right. Who can say exempt?
Exempt is
Go ahead,
Patur.
Oh, we got the 3rd person here. Okay, so we're just everybody all together. Okay, how do you say liable?
Hayab.
Right, right. And no one's looking at their notes, right?
Nope.
Great, very good.
Nope.
How do we say permitted?
Patur.
Mutar.
Huh?
No,
Oh,
Azor
mutar.
is Azor.
Mu- mutar, 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 mutar. There you go. If you have a pen and paper, just write it again.
Yes, yes.
Okay? Even if you've already written it, write it again. Let it sink in. Mutar equals permitted. Okay.
Equals permitted.
How do we say? And if you're reading, don't try to guess. Only guess if you're not reading. Okay. How do we say forbidden?
Forbidden is Azor. There you go.
I see, like, I hear the word and then I see the hand go up. I don't know if this is the lag on the internet connection or what. Okay, and one more thing. How do we say exempt?
Exempt is.
Okay, Will.
Exempt. No.
Patur,
Exempt
good.
is Patur. Exempt is Patur.
Very good. Okay, Patur. All right, now we're gonna keep on. Patur is exempt. Hayav, liable. Asur, forbidden. All right. Does everybody have the link?
Hold on one
Yes, we
second.
do.
Yes,
Yeah?
I do.
Okay, so we're in the seventh law. Deroy, you want to read the seventh law?
7? Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go through. Let me bring up this tab and I'll go ahead and do it.
Okay.
Excuse me one second. I'm just. Okay. Number 7.
Halakha 7.
Okay, there you go. That's the proper way. I'm using a computer that I never use, so that's why.
I'll just go ahead and read it, and you can get the next one once you pull it up, okay?
Okay, I'm here. I got it.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, a person who errs while reading the Megillah.
Wait, okay, whoa.
That's
We're on the Sabbath.
number 7, right?
Wait, yeah, but the laws of the Sabbath.
Yeah,
Oh.
the link you gave us was for the McGill because I pulled up the same.
Oh, really? Oh, man.
Yes.
Okay. My bad. Just a moment. Sorry about that. This should work.
Go back in.
All right, Will, you want to go ahead and read that, and Delroy will get the next law.
Yes. Number 7. Halakha number 7. Number 2, number 3, number 7. Okay. Anyone who performs a forbidden labor, which is forbidden. It's not coming to me. So my bad.
Asur.
Okay, even if he has Azor, hope I say it right. Even if he has no need for the actual labor to be performed, in a liable Hayav for his deed. What is implied? A person distinguished a lamp because he needed to save the oil or the wick from being destroyed or from burning, or so that the earthenware reservoir of the lamp that holds the oil would not break, since he had the intent of extinguishing the lamp, even though he did not do so for the usual purpose of extinguishing. Excuse me one sec. Update. Can't. Sorry. This computer that I haven't used in a while is giving me a lot of updates. So, okay, but merely for the sake of oil. The wick or the earthenware is liable, which is I have. Similarly, a person who moves a thorn 4 cubits in the public domain or extinguishes a coal so that many people will not be injured by it is liable, I have, although usual purpose served, in quotes, by extinguishing the coal or moving the thorn is not important to him, and his intent was merely to prevent injury and is liable. The same implies in other similar situations.
All right. So all this is saying is that it doesn't matter what kind of forbidden activity you're doing, or whether you're doing it for some other purpose, meaning you did a forbidden activity, but you only did it because you wanted to do something else. Your intention wasn't really for the forbidden activity that you did, but you did it anyway because that was necessary to do what you wanted to do. That's still forbidden.
Okay, I got a quick question, if it's okay.
Absolutely.
All right. when I was reading about the Rabbi Shlomo Zalman, some comments that people had made, they said that a light bulb, and that's why I want to ask you because you brought this up, the light bulb, although it is not a fire, you're heating metal, which is forbidden.
Right.
Some arguments run in the way that as long as you're not doing it for cooking, it's okay, but what we just read implies that even though you're not doing it for cooking, it
would still be forbidden. Assuming that heating up a piece of metal until it's red hot is a forbidden activity, that's correct. It would be forbidden no matter for what reason you're doing it, as long as the prohibition is that simply heating it up is forbidden. Simply heating up the piece of metal till it's red hot is forbidden. If it were to say that in and of itself is a prohibition, that's absolutely right. But we're going to get to the law where we will find that the prohibition of having a piece of metal heated up until it's red hot is forbidden. It's a forbidden activity, 100%, on the condition that you do it for a specific thing, for a specific purpose. It's on the condition that you did it for a specific purpose, and it's on the condition that you heated it up with fire.
Versus, and then electricity would obviously.
Right. And also, you would still be able to cook. I mean, microwaves don't heat up a piece of metal, and fluorescent light bulbs are not heating up a piece of metal. It's just gas. So you could still do.
But an incandescent light bulb would be.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Incandescent light bulb would be asur.
If what they're saying were true, if there is a prohibition for heating up a piece of metal across the board, no matter how you heat it up and no matter for what reason you heat it up, then that would be correct. But if the prohibited action is specifically when you heat it up with fire, with intention to do something else, which the halakha states is when you do it for soldering, like with intention to mold something, to mold the metal, and you heated it up with fire, then for sure that'd be forbidden. But that's not what you're doing with the incandescent light bulb.
Okay. All right.
And
Okay.
I mean, well, it could be that there's some opinions, like old opinions, that would still be forbidden, even if you're heating it up for other reasons. But still, I'm pretty sure they're going to say also fire, just as the Rambam does. But what I'm saying is from the Mishneh Torah. So, I mean, even though there may be another opinion, this is a valid. This is not a Reform book. This is not a book from Reform
Right,
Judaism.
right. I just wanted to clarify that, and I believe you have, that the only prohibition is if that you're heating the metal with fire.
If you're heating it with fire, with intention to solder it,
Okay.
okay? Probably to purify the metal also would be a problem. I'd have to look it back up. But there are two aspects to that you do it with fire and you're doing it with a specific intention. All right, let's continue. You want to get the next law, Will?
This is number 8,
Sure.
right?
Sure, hang on just a moment. 8. Whenever a person intends to perform a forbidden labor, but instead, through his actions, causes the performance of another forbidden labor for which he had not intended, he is chayav.
Liable, right?
Because his intent was not carried out. Okay, so why would he be liable if his intent was not carried out?
He's not liable.
Oh, okay, not liable. Okay. What is implied? A person threw a stone or shot an arrow at a colleague or at an animal with the intent of slaying them. Should the object that he propelled uproot a tree in its progress and not kill the intended victim, he is free of chayav, liability. How much more so does the principle apply if one had the intent of performing a lesser transgression and one performed a more serious one? For example, a person intended to throw a stone into, how do you say that?
Carmelit.
Carmelit. Throw a stone into a carmelit, and instead the stone passed into a public domain. He is not held chayav. The same applies in other similar circumstances. I think we read this last week.
Yeah, we did. I just, every week I want us to pick up, like, around the last law that we left off at.
Okay. Should a person have the intent of performing a permitted act and instead performed another act which is forbidden, he is not chayav, liable. For example, should he intend to cut produce that was not attached to the ground and instead cut produce attached to the ground, he is not chayav, liable. The same applies in other similar situations.
Very good. Did everybody comprehend that?
Yep.
In order to be liable, the forbidden action that is done must be the forbidden action that you intended to do. And does anybody remember? Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
What about the intent, though?
This is all about the intent. The action that you intended to do, the forbidden action that you had intention to do, must actually be what ends up being done.
Must be realized.
Right. In order for you to be... Because otherwise, even if another forbidden action occurred as a result of what you did, but you did not intend for that particular forbidden action to happen, then it was against your will. You didn't intend for it to happen.
Okay.
And you're only liable when you intended to do something. Does anybody remember what a Carmelit is? Can anybody...
It's an area, if I remember correctly, it's an area that the rabbis deemed a public area, right?
Right,
It's not
like a public area. Right.
like a public area.
Okay.
Right. Very good. Very, very good. Which would otherwise, from a from straightforward Torah law, what would it be? If the rabbis hadn't prohibited it, then what would be that area's status from a Torah perspective?
It would be patur.
Permitted. You'd be permitted to carry
Oh,
that.
permitted. Okay,
Right.
mutar.
Right. As it is right now, it's patur, meaning you're exempt. You're not allowed to do it, but if you carried there, you're exempt.
Okay.
Alright, so the next law. Let's see. Is there anybody else who wants to get this next law?
We're on number 9, right?
I believe so. Yep, we're on number 9.
Or halakha 9.
Halakha 9.
Okay. Let's see here. Is it should a person, right? That's the one we're on, right? Or am I
Should a
looking at the
person
right?
intend to pick black figs and he picked white figs?
Yeah, that's it. That's the one, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Should a person intend to pick a fig and pick a white fig instead, or should a person intend first to pick figs and then to pick grapes, but instead picked grapes and then figs? He is not liable. He in fact picked everything that he desired, but because he did not pick them in the order that he intended, he is not liable, since he did not act according to his intent. It is purposeful labor that the Torah forbade.
Very good.
That's a little bit over my head there, but
What part did you not get?
well, it's as if you're saying you intend to pick something, but you intend to pick figs, right? But you're picking grape instead. So what's the mix-up? You're picking, and shouldn't be picking be forbade?
Right, picking is forbidden, but he didn't do it in the manner that he intended to do it.
Okay, now I got it. So if he intends to pick figs, but instead he picked grapes, that's okay.
No, it's not okay.
No,
But
no,
he's
it isn't.
exempt.
Oh, he's exempt from that because that's not his intention.
Right.
Okay, now I got it. Now I got it. Now I got it.
Hey, wait a minute. I got a. What is he exempt from? What are we talking about? Is he exempt from stoning?
He's exempt from the death penalty.
From the death. So we're covering laws regarding to the death penalty, not to like bringing a sacrifice.
Also bringing a sacrifice. All of that depends on intention. Let's say he intended to do this forbidden action, but even though he intended to do it, he did not know it was forbidden. So this could also be talking about that case. Whoever has dogs, can you
Not me here.
I don't know.
They're going all out there.
Your doggy's got it already.
They don't sound like Asher's dogs, though.
Yeah, no, his are bigger.
Yeah.
Okay, so
That was my.
what was I gonna say? Okay, all of these laws that we're reading is talking about both death penalty and sacrifice. All of these laws, whether it concerns sacrifice or death penalty, has to do with the knowledge and intent of the person together. If the person intended to do a forbidden action, but he did it without knowing that it was forbidden, that also falls under the category of being beshogeg. Beshogeg means in error, by accident. Even though he intended to do the action, it was still an accident because he didn't know. Beshogeg. New word. Inadvertently. I think I misspelled the English, but that's not our focus here. Everybody there?
Yes.
Okay. Can everybody say beshogeg?
Beshogeg.
Beshogeg.
And what does it mean?
It means by accident.
Right. Or inadvertently. Right. So here with figs, for example, it may be that he 100%, even a fire, he intended to start up his car, right, which causes the ignition to actually make a flame. So he did the forbidden action on purpose. But if he's an individual who accepts the Torah, he wants to keep God's commandments, and he just hasn't learned this yet, he's not disregarding the laws, he just didn't know, then he is not liable for karet. He's not liable for the death penalty. He's b'shogeg. He did it b'shogeg. He did it inadvertently. So he would make a sacrifice. He's not considered a heretic or anything. All of these kinds of statuses depend on the knowledge and the intent of the person, a combination of both. And before we go to the next law, I just wanted to point out what Rabbi Meza posted here on the side. From, let's see, wow, he's posted a lot of stuff over here. Just a moment. Okay, it looks like it's coming from the Laws of Shabbat, the 9th chapter, and I'm guessing it's this 5th or 6th. Oh, he's posting a lot of stuff. Oh, he just did it again. Okay, so the 9th chapter, the 6th halakha. This is coming from the Chabad translation. So you can even find this on the Chabad quote unquote ultra-Orthodox website. A person who melts even the slightest amount of metal, or who heats a piece of metal until it glows like a coal, performs the derivative of cooking. Right? So we're seeing that this prohibition falls under the category of cooking. If we go back to the laws that introduced us to the laws of cooking, we will find that from the beginning it was made clear that all of the prohibition of cooking concerns fire, not the sun or anything else. All right. Similarly, a person who melts wax, tallow, tar, brown tar, or pitch and the like performs the derivative of cooking and is liable. Now, if we continue reading, we're going to see that again, fire is reiterated. Similarly, a person who heats an earthenware vessel, an earthenware utensil until it becomes hard clay is liable for cooking. The general principle is, so this means all of this is under this category that we're about to specify here. Whether one softens a firm entity with fire or hardens a soft entity, again with fire, one is liable for cooking. If it's not with fire, then to leave butter in the sun would also be liable for cooking. But we already learned that cooking with the sun is permitted. It's forbidden rabbinically if you cook with the sun using a piece of heated metal. That's rabbinic prohibition. All right. So, and we're going to find concerning the metal that there's also a further stipulation. I don't have the exact location memorized, but we'll get there eventually. So keep coming and we'll get there. All right. Okay, so next law. We are on the 10th law. Gabriel, do you want to get the 10th law for us?
Hello?
Yeah. Gabriel. Gabriel, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Do you mind reading the 10th halakha?
Yeah, I'll have to bring it back up. I had to shut down my computer real quick because my dad needed something. But
okay, so I'll get somebody else to read it, and then you can get the one after.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, that's number 10. I'll go ahead.
All right.
Okay, when a person had two candles before him, and both of them were either burning or extinguished, and he desired to kindle or extinguish one, but instead he kindled or extinguished the other, he is liable. For he performed the forbidden labor, that is Ketur, labor that he intended to perform. To what can the matter be compared? To a person who intended to pick one fig and picked another instead, or a person who desired to kill one living being and kill another instead, he is liable.
We're not talking about murder here. We're talking about killing animals.
Just animals, yes. Liable, which is Hayav, because Hayav, because the forbidden Patur labor, which
no. Patur means exempt.
Patur, yes, Patur means exempt. Sorry,
asur,
forbidden means azur labor, which he intended to do was performed. Sorry about that mix-up.
So here he still did one specific forbidden action. He wasn't doing like a composite action. So the entirety of the forbidden action was still done, even though it wasn't. It's the same forbidden action that he originally intended to do. It was just done to a different entity. Whereas before there was a whole composite forbidden action being done, and the entirety was not done in the manner that he intended. It's a very subtle distinction.
Yeah.
You're best to just try not to do forbidden actions.
Yep.
11th law. Gabriel, you ready?
I think he's offline.
Oh. All right, Will, you want to take it?
Sure. Let me pull it up here. One is, however, freed of chayav liability in the following instance. There were two candles before a person, one lit and one extinguished. The person intended to kindle the one that was extinguished first, and to extinguish the second candle afterwards. Nevertheless, the order of his actions became reversed, and instead he extinguished the candle first and kindled the second candle afterwards. If he extinguished one and kindled the other in a single breath, he is chayav, liable. Although he did not kindle the first candle before extinguishing the other, he did not delay its lighting and perform both activities simultaneously. Therefore, he is chayav, liable. The same applies in other similar circumstances. Whenever a person performs a forbidden labor casually without specific intention, he is not chayav. He is not liable.
All right. So that's the whole point here. All of this is being done without a specific intention.
Okay, I might have not completely understood what I just read.
I wasn't following the whole thing because I closed my page.
Okay.
Let's see, the 11th law. Maybe I can get it through the English. If one, however, is free. One is, however, free of liability in the following instance. The person intended to kindle the one that was extinguished first, and to extinguish the second candle afterward. Nevertheless, the order of his actions became reversed, and instead he extinguished the candle first and kindled the second candle afterwards. If he extinguishes one and kindled the other in a single breath, he is liable. By breath, it means at the same time.
Right.
Although he did not kindle the first candle before extinguishing it, he did not delay its lighting and performed with activities simultaneously. Therefore, he is liable. The same applies to all other similar situations. It's just talking about, see, his ultimate intention was just that they both be done more or less at the same time.
So because he, I don't know, I guess because he did it, he's liable.
Wow.
Because he did it, he's liable.
Just a moment, I gotta make the letters bigger. One is one is, however, free. What's that?
Well, it looks like he wants to kindle one that's extinguished. And then I guess he wants to extinguish the one that's kindled. I'm not quite understanding it.
Well, we can come back to it.
Okay, yeah. Sounds like a plan.
I think it's basically continuing on from the previous halakha that we hopefully I say it right that we just read, that I read actually. I think is a continuation of that.
Yeah, it's definitely
adding on to
right.
to what was
Absolutely
previously.
Right. All right, we want to make ground. I will get back to this halakha next week, God willing. Remind me if I don't, and we'll try to clarify it next week. All right. Somebody want to get 13?
Okay.
13.
A person who transfers an article from one domain to another is held liable, hayav, in the following situation. He was wearing a belt and he placed a burden that is commonly transferred in this manner between his body and his garment. Whether the burden hung in front of him or it had shifted between him, at the same time he transferred it. He is held liable, hayab, since it is likely to shift position.
Okay. Does everybody understand what this is talking about? What scenario?
Transferring from one place to another.
Right, it's talking about transferring from one domain to another.
Well,
isn't it on his body in this case?
It's talking about. Can everybody see my waist?
Wait, hold on. Let me. Yes.
Yeah. So, like, well, here's my undergarment. Like, if I have a belt here, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I have this shirt. If I were to drop something into my T-shirt, it could be carried here on the inside between my flesh and the shirt.
Okay.
That's what it's talking about. So he might have thought that if he's carrying this way, it's allowed because he's not carrying with his hands, or it's not carrying it on his head. So it's letting us know that even though it's not actually in his hands, but he's carrying it. So he's still liable.
Thus the backpack is
because there's an intent to carry.
Yeah, his intent is to carry.
Okay.
Even his intent was not to carry. That's what he's doing.
So he's still liable in that case.
Right, as long as he knows that it's forbidden.
Okay.
If he didn't know it's forbidden, he's patur from the death penalty. He's exempt from the death penalty, but he would make a sacrifice.
What if, let's say, I have a trash in my pocket or anything that I accidentally throw somewhere?
Right. That's a very good question.
Someplace else, would that be patur?
Yeah, that would for sure. If you didn't know it was there, and then afterwards you found out, of course you're patur. You're exempt. If it were over a certain size, there may be a obligation for a sacrifice, but there's a certain size that would have to be. Like the amount at which the size, there's a certain size that was specified in the laws that if something is under that size, it's not considered carrying. So like if you have a little tiny piece of lint or a hair that's like in your pocket, you're not going to be liable. All right? Under any situation, not for a sacrifice or anything. All right? Let's go.
Got it.
14. Will, you want to get it?
Sure. We are on what, 14?
Right, right.
Yes.
Okay. Whenever a person desired to perform a sur, a forbidden labor on the Shabbat, began the performance of that labor, and performed an amount of work sufficiently to incur liability, chayav, he is held liable, even if he did not complete the task he desired to perform. For example, a person to desire to write a note or a contract on the Sabbath, do not say that he is liable until he completes his desire and writes the entire note or contract. Instead, as soon as he writes 2 letters, he is liable. Similarly, a person who desires to weave an entire garment is held liable after weaving 2 strands. Although he intended to complete the entire garment, he is held liable because he intentionally performed the amount of work sufficient to incur hayav, liability. The same applies in all similar situations.
Okay. So there are going to be certain amounts that are going to be given throughout the continuation of the laws of the Sabbath for different actions. So that if you don't do over that amount, you're not going to incur liability.
Okay.
Everybody, yeah.
I'm sorry, I got another question.
Sure.
All right.
If somebody, I don't know if you can all realize it, but some people's, maybe mine does this also sometimes. If you notice that you're causing an echo, just turn off your mic unless you're speaking.
Okay. No, I'm
Right.
fine. I'm good.
I don't know
here.
where this goes. All right. What's the question, man?
Okay, folding your talit on Shabbat,
Yeah.
right? I heard from someone you're not supposed to fold your talit on Shabbat, but then a rabbi told me as long as you don't fold it the way that you normally do it on a regular week, like if you fold it the reverse, then you're okay.
Right.
Is that?
Yeah. I mean, I would have to like have everything memorized to know everything.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No. But as far as I remember, there's no issue at all unless you are actually pressing a crease into it.
Okay.
But if there's more of an issue, we're gonna find that. But I'm pretty certain there's no. I mean, I know for them there is. For Ashkenazim and I'm guessing also Sfaradim, I know that there's an issue. They have issues with everything. And for everything except for what's explicit. Whatever's explicit, then that's okay to not do. Okay. Okay, so where were we? Did you read 14 or 15 just now?
We're going to number 15 right now.
You want to get that, buddy?
Oh, why not? I'll do it.
Giddy up.
Okay. Whenever 2 people share in the performance of a forbidden labor, one of them could have performed by himself. They are both free from liability.
Right. Can you give an example?
Okay. Say for instance, if 2 people set out to lift a television from one place to the next.
Right.
And
one domain to another domain.
From one domain, yes, to another. But however, this television could be lifted by one person.
Right.
Right. Then one person there isn't liable.
Neither of them are liable.
Neither. Okay.
but that's good. That's a good example. All right, go ahead.
Okay, okay. All right. So this applies whenever the performed part of the forbidden, which is forbidden always getting me azur, labor, and the other performed the remainder. Example, one move an article from one domain and the other place it down on the other domain,
You're a
or
prophet.
they both perform the azur. Go on, sorry.
Said you're a prophet.
No. Labor together from the beginning to the end. For example, they both held a pen and wrote, or they both held a loaf of bread and transferred it from one domain to another.
All right. I think that's pretty clear. Everybody understood that? That's pretty simple.
I'm sure it's pretty clear. Yeah.
All right. Will, you want to get 16?
Sure. When, however, a single individual cannot perform the forbidden labor alone and must be joined by others, all the individuals involved are held liable. For example, two people held a beam and transferred it to a public domain. Since neither one of them had the strength to perform this task alone, and they performed it together from the beginning to the end, they are both held liable. The minimum amount, or chayav, the minimum amount of work for which they are held liable is the same as for a single individual who performs such a task. The following decision applies when one of them has sufficient strength to transfer the beam alone, but the other is unable to transfer it alone. If they join together and transfer the beam, the one who is capable of moving it himself is held liable. The second one is considered merely as offering assistance, and a person who offers assistance in this fashion is not liable at all. The same applies in other similar situations.
Okay. I want to check the Hebrew real fast. Make sure that...
Okay.
Okay. Sometimes between the Hebrew, the accurate Hebrew text and this translation, sometimes it will be the opposite. So I just want to make sure it's not the case here. And also, like, you know how we skipped number 11? Even though we didn't get a thorough understanding of it, we kind of just like set it aside. So this is really the way that we encourage people to learn, not to forget that law, but you should like make a mark to the side and you can look into it later. So there's an idea that we divide our time of learning into 3. 1/3, we're just reading through the written text of the Torah. Excuse me. 1/3 of our time that we have every day to learn, we should just be reading through the text of the Torah. Just reading through, getting our eyes and our ears used to hearing the words and letting the words sink into our subconscious without going into depth into every single sentence. And then same thing with the laws, to just get a cursory overview of the laws, which is what we're doing right now. So this way you make a lot of progress and you gather a lot of information. You get a very good overview of everything, even though maybe some details you didn't exactly get. So that's the second third of your learning. And then the final 1/3 of your learning, you're going into detail about things. So the problem with the way that most of the Jewish people today learn is that they take the approach where historically you will find in Hilchot Talmud Torah, in the laws of Torah study, that you're only supposed to devote 1/3 of your time to going into detail of every single thing and connecting the dots and reasoning and everything. While that's supposed to just be about 1/3 of your learning, today that's become pretty much 100% of their learning, so that they never get an overview of everything. They won't move on to the next law until they've turned every stone of possibility for each little sentence that they read. I mean, if you have all the time in the universe to learn, then that's sounds pretty good, I guess.
Taking
If
a
you have
test, you'll take that test. Excuse me, just if you're taking a test, you'll go forever. You'll never finish the test.
Exactly. Good. Right, but we don't have forever, you know?
Yes, yes, yes.
All right, so where were we? I think we're on 17.
Yes, we are.
You ready?
Yeah, why not? I'll go for it.
Go ahead.
You going for it, Will?
Sure.
Okay.
Whenever an asur, forbidden labor is performed in a destructive manner, one is not held liable. What is implied? A person who injures a colleague or an animal with a destructive intent, one who rips or burns garments, or one who breaks utensils with a destructive intent, is not held chayav. A person who dug a pit solely because he needed the earth inside, it is considered as having performed a asur, a forbidden labor, with a destructive intent, and is therefore free of liability, of chayav. Although he performed an asur labor, a forbidden labor, he is not held liable because he had a destructive intent.
All right. One thing that you start to get a grasp of in this law, I think, is where anti-Semites go wrong when they try to study the Talmud, and then among those quotes of the Talmud that they bring that are kind of there, they misunderstand. You know, like when they give lists of all kinds of stuff that's supposedly in the Talmud that's like crazy and evil, usually about half of what they bring is not even there whatsoever. They're just totally made up, or it's from like another book that's much more recent. Usually it's a mystical text. But some of the things that they bring are actually in the Talmud, but they misunderstand it. So this gives you an example. Here it says a person who injures a colleague or an animal with destructive intent, okay? So it says he injures a colleague, that's a human being. And then it says, because he had destructive intent, he's not held liable. Now, the anti-Semite will take this and say, look, the Jews, okay, now not only is a rabbi allowed to, God forbid, rape a little girl, all right, or a little boy, whatever, but he's also allowed to injure another person, and he gets away with it, as long as his intention was destructive. Doesn't that sound crazy?
Sure is.
Okay, but here, we're not talking about whether or not a person is allowed to hurt another person. We're talking about whether or not he's going to be liable for violation of the Sabbath prohibitions, the prohibitions of breaking the Sabbath. We're not talking about the prohibition of injuring your colleague. Of course you're liable for injuring your colleague. But that's a separate prohibition. We're talking about the prohibition of breaking the Sabbath. Does everybody understand that difference?
Yes.
I totally understand.
Right, but you also understand how someone who
Oh,
doesn't...
people would, yes, or misconstrue and take things out of context. Basically, that's what they're doing.
Right, that's exactly what they're doing.
Just implicate something negative on something, they will take that, that aspect that's not saying this is what this is saying, but they will use it for that purpose. I totally understand.
Right. So in this, go ahead, William. Sorry.
Well, I'm glad you clarified, because I myself, after reading it, I can't believe I'm reading what I'm reading. So I'm glad you clarified that. I understand.
No, it's easy to be confused. We're talking about in all of these laws in Hilchot Shabbat, we're talking about the laws of the Sabbath. We're not talking about the laws of injuring your family or whatever. So somebody who injured his colleague, he's not going to be liable for breaking the Sabbath if he injured his colleague with destructive intent. He is going to be liable for injuring his colleague. But he's not
and those laws are already on the book already.
Right.
For injuring your colleague.
That's also in Mishnah Torah. There's even more laws on that. So we're only talking about breaking the Sabbath here. So if you injured your colleague on the Sabbath with destructive intent, you're liable for injuring your colleague. You're not liable for breaking the Sabbath and doing so. Now, if you did both somehow, if you'd be liable for both, then there'd be an extra punishment. But we're talking about different levels of punishments or different sacrifices. So if injuring your colleague would make you liable for injuring your colleague and liable for breaking the Sabbath, you might have 2 extra sacrifices to make. Do you understand where we're getting at here?
Yeah, I got it now.
Okay.
If you clarified it, it came completely clear. When I read it, I was like, oh my God. But no, you clarified it. I understand it.
So in this case, if he injured his colleague, he will be liable for that, but he's not going to have to make another sacrifice for the Sabbath as well.
Right.
All right, or death penalty.
Well, he's still in trouble.
He's still in trouble, of course.
Right.
This is one book within a group of 14 books. So they're all together. We have to take them all, like, it's just part of the greater context. All right, let's continue.
It's just like modern law, basically. There's a lot of things that intertwine in essence, and they cross over. But it's not applying to one certain aspect. You got to look at, and this law is applying to the Shabbat, and that's about it. It's not applying to other things. But it's crossover in essence. Like, there's laws of, if you destroyed one property, or there's law if you destroy, there's so many laws of this in modern law. That's what I'm talking about.
Right.
Common law. There's so many laws towards one specific thing. One specific aspect of destroying, a person's property.
Of course.
You can't use it. You can't use a law. Say, well, you can use something. And I'm a little bit mixed up here, but there's so many laws out there regarding destruction of property.
Right.
But you can't, basically, interchanging these laws, you can't use one aspect of this law and use it against another.
Right.
And this is what this is saying.
Right.
Hopefully I do clarify.
I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. And really, even though the Jewish law is pretty large, anybody who takes issue with the Jewish faith because of the size should really be a little more realistic and compare the size of Jewish law as it developed over thousands of years to the size of American law as it's developed in only a few hundred years. And really, then you will get an appreciation for how abbreviated and concise Jewish law is compared to what it could have been. All right, so 18. We're making a lot of progress today. I hope no one's falling asleep.
Okay.
Let me give, just to wake everybody up, 3 new vocabulary words. 3 new vocabulary words. Okay. Everybody's got a pen and paper?
Yep.
All right. So the first one we already gave quickly. How did you say inadvertently?
Bishogig.
Very, very good. Inadvertently. So bishogeg means inadvertently. All right. Now we learned that asur means what?
Asur, forbidden.
Asur means forbidden. Okay.
Yes.
So asur means forbidden. It's an adjective. Now the noun for something that's forbidden is isur. Okay. Everybody get that?
Okay, the noun for forbidden is isur.
Forbidden is asur.
Right, but you said the noun for forbidden? Or,
Yeah, the noun for forbidden is isur.
Okay.
So the noun for forbidden is like prohibition.
Okay.
So I would say that killing a man is an isur. Killing a man is an isur. It's a prohibition. Or I could say it is forbidden to kill a man. It is asur to kill a man. These are just subtleties. I mean,
So a sore, as you said, is the description or the
right.
adjective. Okay. And the noun is isur.
Right.
Okay.
Now for liable, hayav is liable. That is the adjective. Hayav. Now the noun is hiyuv. Everybody got that? I typed it out on the side for you.
Yeah. And this is the Hebrew pronunciation, right?
Hiyuv, right.
EU. Okay.
So hayav means liable. It can also mean obligated. It depends on the context. Same way, hiyuv can be liability, the noun, or it can also be obligation. The noun for obligated is obligation. The noun for liable is liability. Right? And if you see, you can start to see the pattern of Hebrew, which is the way you learn to conjugate Hebrew words, the same way that the vowels for forbidden, asur, the vowels turn in the noun form to isur, so that the vowel is now e, and then an u. So also with liable, e and u, hiyuv, isur. Do you see that?
Yep.
Okay. So that's the way things are conjugated. Once you recognize the pattern, then you can pretty much guess other words also how they're going to change from adjective to noun.
Okay, this is a little off the topic, but since you're bringing up Hebrew, I saw one of your videos where you were talking about how the word blessing, baruch, is related to the word me. I think you said brich.
Berech.
So, berech. Does that mean that? How is that related to blessing? Is that why we bow when we say baruch?
Yep.
Or it is okay.
They're the same exact words. I mean, letters. You could even spell it the same way. The only difference are the vowels.
And you mentioned something about, I don't know if I understood in the video correctly. So blessing is like being submissive to God or bowing to God?
Right.
Okay.
It also it comes from a word for to bestow or to endow something, like an endowment, or to add value to something. There's another Hebrew word that's also related, and that I think that's, I don't remember the exact word. I think it's bricha. I'm not sure. I can look it up real fast. Look, I have right here. Look at that. If I can find it quickly. Oh, I'm not going to take up too much of your time.
That's fine. Since we were on Hebrew, I just wanted to...
No, that's good. It's good. So it also connotates like value or worth of something. So that's how that's kind of I mean, even though you could translate it multiple ways, that's why in the context of saying prayers to God, I personally prefer using the word worshipful, because if you look up the word worshipful in a dictionary, it's linguistically related to the word for worth or value. So you're attributing value and worth to something when you worship, like a unique value or worth. And so the word worshipful expresses both the part of the meaning of the word baruch, that means value or worth, and it's also conveying the idea of the word berech or ni, in the sense that you are bowing to God, because worship also kind of connotates, it doesn't actually mean to bow, but it kind of connotates bowing to worship. So I think it's a very good word that contains all of those meanings. There's also a Hebrew word for bow that actually is the same root. So berech means knee, and that's the word that I accidentally said in the wrong context. Bericha means to kneel. And so we'll read one more law, and then you can ask whatever questions you want before we leave.
Okay.
All right, one more law. Who read the last law?
Yeah, I think I
Will. Okay, I'll go for number 18, and okay, let me start. Whenever a person carries out a destructive activity for the sake of ultimately performing a constructive activity, he is liable, hayav. For example, a person who demolishes a structure in order to build another, in its place, one who erase for the sake of writing something else in the place of the eraser, or one who dug a pit in order to place the foundation of a structure within the same applies in other similar situations. The minimum measure of the destructive activity for which he is held liable by Av is equal to that of the corresponding positive activity.
That was understood?
Yeah, that is pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Oh, look at that. We have just one more law, and we finish this chapter. So let's just do that real fast.
Okay.
Will, you want to get the last law?
I think Will is
off the air.
Yeah.
Are you there?
Okay, I'll read it.
Wait, he's here. Just a second.
Oh, hold on. I had it on mute. I was reading along and I didn't even realize I was on mute. Okay, here we go. Whenever a person performs a asur, isur. Okay.
Here the English is an adjective, but the Hebrew it's going to be all in one word, and isur.
Isur. Okay. So it's always isur, right, and not asur.
Well, asur, if you translate forbidden, it would be asur. But if you say isur, it means these two words together at the same time. Isur means a forbidden labor or a forbidden action.
And that's the noun.
Right.
Okay, so whenever a person performs an isur on the Shabbat.
Right, exactly.
In that way, okay. Partially with intent and partially unintentionally, he is not liable.
So that explains some of the previous things that weren't clear to us. Remember?
Okay.
About the figs.
Right. Because he intended to pick one fig, but ultimately picked the other one. So since
it was only partial.
Right. So then he's not liable because it was only partial. regardless of whether one began the performance of the Isur intentionally and completed it unintentionally, or one began the Isur unintentionally and completed it intentionally. One is liable for karet only when one performs the entire minimum measure of an Isur intentionally from the beginning to the end. In such a circumstance where witnesses who administered a warning to be present, one would be chayav for execution by stoning. Conversely, one is chayav to bring, or one is hiyuv.
No, hiyuv would be liability, so we don't say one is liability to bring.
Oh, okay. So one, wait, I lost my place. Conversely, one is chayav to bring a sin offering of a fixed nature. When one performs the entire minimum measure of Isur unintentionally from the beginning to the end.
Very, very good. Look at that. We got the first chapter under our belts.
There we go.
Next week, we'll get chapter 2. All right?
Yep.
Any questions? That's it for today.
Yeah. Straightforward. Today was a really good day. I like it. Even though I started out with a little bit of glitches there, turns out really fine. Okay.
Baruch Hashem. Okay. So what is b'shogeg? Don't look at notes. What is b'shogeg?
You got me.
B'shogeg
Just try to
is
get
inadvertently.
Okay.
Inadvertently. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Will, how do you say inadvertently?
B'shogeg.
Okay. How do we say the word asur in the noun form?
Isur.
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 Right. How do we say hayav in a noun form?
I know it's an E, so I'm just going to say yeah.
Right? It's going to be the same. It's going to be the same vowels as isur.
Wait, repeat the question.
Oh, forbidden, sorry.
Okay. The word for hayav means liable, and hayav is an adjective. It just describes something as being liable. Okay. Now, we want to take the word hayav and make it a noun. And when we do that, the word hayav is going to become a noun by replacing the vowels in the word hayav with the same vowels as isur.
Hiyav.
Isur. Hiyuv. Right.
Hiyuv.
Right. So it's going to follow a pattern.
Okay, so I got the first vowel, but I missed the last.
That's fine. And sometimes there are exceptions. It's not always going to be the same, but there are definitely patterns. Right. So hiyuv is the noun, liability.
Okay.
EU.
And how do we say permitted?
Hold on. Patur. No. Patur. Yeah, patur.
Patur.
No, patur
Aval
is...
asur.
Oh, no, that's exempt. Mutar.
Right. Patur is exempt.
Yeah.
Right. And what is permitted?
Mutar.
Mutar. Very good. Oh, an easy way to remember the difference is there's also a term. You guys know both of these terms basically, but it's often said like in one phrase. Patur. I'll write it out for you. Patur, aval, asur. Aval equals but. So there are many things we're going to read in the laws of the Sabbath that are going to be patur, aval, asur. Can somebody translate that for us?
Exempt from a prohibition.
Right. Aval means but.
Oh. exempt but forbidden.
Right, right. So if we remember this phrase patur aval asur, then we won't mix up patur with mutar. Hamoud.
Yeah.
All right. So if you guys don't have any questions, then that'll be it. Bye-bye.
Shalom.
Take care, Yosef. Have a shalom, peace,
Kodesh Tov.
and have
Bye-bye.
a wonderful week.
Thank you.
We'll
Shavua
see you
tov.
next.
Shavuot.
Rak barachot.
Rak berachot. What's rak?
Only.
Only blessings. Okay.
Yalla,
Only
shalom.
blessings.
Rak berachot. Shalom.
Toda.
Shalom, shalom.
Bye.
Bye.
Shalom.
Bye.
Cancel this.